Here. Terence. Here. Marissa Shepard. Here. Susan Kiefer. And Kevin Keating. Here. Okay, thank you. And welcome to staff and guests that are with us today. In this large room, we'll do our best to be heard. It's a little challenging with the setup of the room with trying to be visible to everybody, so we apologize if it feels like we have our backs to you, because we do. So, okay. Next, if you could join me in thought as I read the JCLS land acknowledgement. Jackson County Library Services acknowledges that its libraries are located within the traditional lands of the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians and the Modoc Nation, as well as the Shasta, Takelma, and Latgawa people, whose descendants are now identified as members of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. We take this moment to recognize the indigenous peoples whose traditional lands are where residents of Jackson County live today. JCLS is committed to fostering understanding, deep respect, and honor for indigenous people, and we encourage you to learn more about the land you reside on. For more information, go to jcls.org/land. So, do you have any introductions?
I do. If Jenny, if you would come forward with your new board member, we can introduce Patty at this time.
I'm excited to introduce you all to one of our newest board members, Patty Benakiotis. Yeah, I still have to practice it. And she just came on board last month, and she has started out with fire and passion and enthusiasm, and I'm really excited to have her on the board, and I can't wait for you all to see what's coming ahead for us. I'll give her just a moment to introduce herself and say a little bit about herself.
Hi, I'm a 15-year resident of Jackson County, native Oregonian. I began my career as a language arts teacher at the secondary level, and then about 25 years ago, began to do editing and copywriting for various travel organizations and publishers. And I've been working for a travel magazine as an associate editor for the last 16 years. And I look forward to supporting the library and the foundation. I hope to use my writing skills to contribute as best I can.
And I'll just say a quick note that Patty has another engagement, so she has to step out early. But I wanted to be sure to introduce you to her and let you know that we have two other board members that I look forward to introducing to you as soon as possible. One of them, Megan Walk, is the proprietor of Hummingbird Estates. And as anyone who owns a business knows, sometimes you have to be the front of house, the person doing the actual work. So she's working this evening and unable to make it to introduce. But I'm hoping as we do more of our opportunities where we meet each other's boards, the foundation and the district, that we'll have an occasion when she's able to join us for that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Anything? Anything else? Okay. Okay. We are beginning a new fiscal year for the Library District Board, and one of the tasks we need to accomplish at this meeting is electing a president and vice president of the board for this coming fiscal year. So I would open the floor to nominations for those two positions.
Nominate Vicky to continue as president of our board. I think she's done a good job, and I think continuity would be very helpful.
You?
No.
A motion and a second and a willing. Pardon? Kevin, I think. Oh.
Well,
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, I should have introduced. This is Hannah Harding. She is filling in for Jacqueline Bunick, our normal attorney, as Jacqueline has gone out on maternity leave today. Thank you, Kevin.
I will say, we are using a slightly different mic setup as we are in this room. For our audience who may not be able to hear as well, if you wouldn't mind directing your voice into these black mics on the table, it will make it a lot easier for everyone to hear, both virtually and in the room. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second and a willing board member. So all in favor? Yeah, raise your hand. I don't know. You prefer if we speak out loud the votes or whichever?
I can simply say that it has been unanimous in
Okay.
this case.
Okay, so floor is open for nominations for vice president. Okay,
I'd like to nominate Susan Kiefer for the vice president role.
was that a second?
second. Yeah,
Okay,
I'll
thank
start
you.
speaking up, sorry.
Okay, it's all right. Okay, we have a motion and a second and another willing board member. If you could speak a yes or no on voting. All in favor? Yes. Aye.
Yes.
Okay. That concludes that process, so. Thank you. We are set for another year. Any requests for adjustments to the agenda or requests to move anything off the consent agenda to the regular agenda, which tonight is just minutes? Okay. Otherwise, if I could have a motion to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay,
I will have to abstain as I was not there for the executive session.
sounds good. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Right, right. One abstention. Okay. So, Val, do you have the, okay, the list? Okay. Okay. Okay, oral requests and communications from the audience. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and shall be limited to comments on non-agenda items or on agenda items that do not otherwise provide for public comment. The board will listen to all comments but will not respond during this meeting. We have obviously a group of people in the room. We have, I believe, a few people in our virtual audience. And because our agenda is sort of busy, we're going to try and keep the public comments to about 30 minutes. So if you are signed up, one, we will be paying attention to time primarily because we have a lot of people that wish to speak. So if you can try and be respectful of the time limits. And we will probably alternate some between people who are present in the room and some people who are attending virtually.
Via Zoom, if you would use the raise your hand feature to raise your hand, and I will be able to call on you. Vicky, would you like me to just run down the list and call people by name? Is
Yeah,
that easier?
I think that would be easy.
I will
So-
also give a verbal time cue when your time has elapsed. So,
Okay.
and I will simply run by the order that people have signed up. So, thank you.
And to
sorry.
speak, yeah.
This table here is for public comment. Again, please direct to the black mic. So, thank you very much. So first, and I do apologize if I misread your name at any point. So first we have Amanda Morehouse.
Okay, I'm up here in regards to the pride flag being removed at the Ashland Library. My name is Amanda Morehouse. Instagram account, the Yevs Dropper, regularly shares stories of queer people who have been murdered. Last week, this is what they shared. There are two different stories here involving our trans siblings that have been murdered in the recent weeks that we know of. One, our beautiful little sister, 14-year-old Polly Likens, a vibrant trans teenager from Pennsylvania, was murdered and dismembered by a 29-year-old man. Polly would have been turning 15 years old on Saturday. There was a vigil happening for her on the 13th. Her family says she was the biggest jokester who played pranks on her family and also was a selfless and loving kid. The second one, our beautiful sister, 35-year-old Liara Tsai, was a proud trans woman who worked as a DJ/producer. She was found dead in Minnesota. An autopsy determined that she died from multiple sharp force injuries. She moved to Minneapolis from Iowa City just 6 weeks prior in order to advance her career and live in a city with a larger trans community. She performed and DJ'd and had already gained a following in the Twin City areas. A close friend of hers said it's like you felt this pull because she was just so authentic to her bones. What does the month after Pride Month look like in 2024? A 14-year-old trans girl being dismembered by a man/demon in the middle of the night? What does the month after Pride Month look like in 2024? The consistent and constant denial of the dangers that queer people are living with and facing when the rainbow flags are down and the music stops. Why would you take down a pride flag because someone or someone's are uncomfortable? Queer people are being murdered. Why is discomfort prioritized over murder? You put the flag up in 2019 to show your support for the LGBTQIA+ community. So by taking it down, do you no longer support the LGBTQIA+ community? I ask that you folks who are making decisions, please get a stronger backbone and truly stand up for what you claim to believe. Libraries are supposed to be safe places. Whoever complained about the pride flag being displayed was certainly not in any physical threat. Maybe they felt discomfort, but that is not the same as safety or lack of it. And therefore, again, I'm asking, why is discomfort prioritized over actual danger and death to the queer community?
Next, we have Desiree Yanez Courtney. Again, I apologize if I misread somebody's name.
Hello, esteemed Jackson County board members. My name is Desiree Yanez Canton. I am speaking to you today as a Medford Pride Work group member and a lifetime library patron. When I first came out, when I was out at the library was my only safe space where I could escape persecution and bigotry. Please consider all of the young LGBTQIAA+ who need a safe space in this very bigoted valley. We are actively being doxxed and harassed for being out and in the community. Jackson County Library is one of the few safe places for us and our children and students. That rainbow bunting flag in the Ashland is a gentle nod that we are all welcome and informed, not only in this library, but all of the books that you line the shelves. Please reconsider.
Daniel Thorpe.
Hello, everyone. I wasn't actually originally planning to speak. I was just going to come in support of members I know that work at the library who were very distressed by the removal of the flag. So I'm here to talk about the flag as well. My name is Daniel Thorpe. I'm the owner of Rogue Party Bus. I am a out and proud queer business owner, which is very hard to do in this valley sometimes. So I have definitely faced my share of hate. And I'm kind of a policy junkie. And so and Allison may know that because Allison and I worked together for a long time. When I looked at the policies, I was very confused at what policy was being referenced in the removal of this flag. I was told by another member who emailed in that it was removed because of the gifts policy, which talks about how gifts are received to the library. I heard another policy listed as the display and bulletin boards policy. And I just kind of want to talk about both of those. Number one, the gifts policy does have the option for a member to do a request for reconsideration of library materials. If that was the policy, I assume that this individual who had problems with a pride flag put in that request and that request was considered. That request is ultimately up to the library director to approve or deny. In reviewing the bulletin boards policy, I could not find anywhere in the policy any requirement, as was told by a member through email, that it was required that displays rotated, that it was required that really there are no considerations within it that say when a display ends or starts. And what's distressing to me is this display went up in 2019. This display, whatever you want to call it, a pride flag, put up in support of members of our community because of a hate group called the Salt Shakers, planning a protest at the Ashland Library. It's been up for 5 years, and even those display rules are really meant for temporary displays. And it even shows in the fact that this flag is being taken down, or was taken down July 1st, because had you taken it down 2 days after a complaint, it's very obvious that you are in cognizant understanding that Pride ended at the end of June. And so waiting until July 1st shows an understanding that taking down a pride flag in the middle of Pride Month would be difficult for our community. But I'm here to say my queerness doesn't end July 1st. My need for a safe space in this valley does not end July 1st. And I look around and I see our community and people working in the library who are actively day to day seeing a world where we have 250 pieces of legislation plus across this country trying to demonize and erase our existence in this community. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Ainsley Herrick.
Carrie, this is the statement from the Queer Affinity Group. Has that been approved for extra time? Or? Ainsley Herrick, Ashland branch staff. To Library Director Carrie May and the JCLS Board of Directors, we are sharing this letter today as members of the JCLS Queer Affinity Group, looking to express our concern over the removal of the Pride banner near the Gresham entrance of the Ashland Library on July 1st, 2024. This decision made by Director Carrie May after a complaint received by the board is directly harmful to the queer staff, patrons, and community within our library district. This Pride banner was initially installed in 2019 in a direct statement of support for our queer community and staff as a response to the local hate group, the RV Salt Shakers, protesting one of our long-standing programs, the Queer Coffee House. This hate group remains active today, protesting queer events across the Rogue Valley, as recent as June of 2024 at Medford Pride, where JCLS had a booth. Discrimination is also present within our library buildings, where patrons and staff regularly face complaints and harassment or worse, including 2 incidents in Ashland within the last 7 months that were severe enough to lead to permanent suspensions. Right before the banner was removed, staff found a patron comment that told the library to remove the faggot flags on the Tell Us About Your Library display, soliciting feedback and improvements from the public. Given the increase in hate crimes against the LGBTQ+ community across the country multiple years straight, plus the recent instances of queerphobia in Jackson County, it is our position that consistent and visible support for queer community members and staff is more important than ever. The removal of the Pride banner conveys a message that this type of solidarity and support is no longer available to either staff or patrons. It sends a message, intentional or otherwise, that JCLS prioritized potential individual discomfort over the inclusion and safety of our staff and patrons, undercutting the safe space that branch-specific staff have worked to create, and highlighting the vulnerability of visibly queer library materials, displays, and even staff members. Because the banner was removed due to Library Director Carrie May determining it fell in a gray area between JCLS's gift acceptance policy and the display policy, and given that complaints leading to the removal argued its permanence was exclusionary to straight people, staff now have valid concerns that other forms of queer representation, such as staff pride apparel and pins, will be seen as similarly exclusionary. Library policies in the JCLS Employee Handbook do not provide protections for regalia and other forms of self-expression, celebrating or representing marginalized identities, and future complaints could lead to similar demands for removal. The Queer Affinity Group recognizes and appreciates Library Director Carrie May's statement that she will work to have protection included in the Employee Handbook review scheduled for fall of this year. But this length of time and the necessary approval by the Board of Directors before implementation gives ample opportunity for the possibility of patron complaints regarding staff pride regalia. The impact of the banner's removal is an erasure of the unique needs for support and acceptance from communities like our LGBTQ+ staff and patrons, and the intersectionality of identities within the queer community itself. This removal also sets a precedent that complaints about any marginalized group may be met with removal of representation if not explicitly protected by policy, and shows our patrons facing racial, religious, economic, or other forms of discrimination that they too can see their representation across JCLS revoked at any time. The Queer Affinity Group requests the following from the Board of Directors and Library Director Carrie May in order to assure us of your continued support for the LGBTQ+ community. 1, immediate reinstatement of the banner, either for permanent display or until an adequate replacement can be found and installed with input from the Queer Affinity Group. 2, a statement from Library Director Carrie May to the Board of Directors and all staff reaffirming the district's commitment to inclusion, reminding them of the JCLS statement against systemic injustice and the district's precedent that visibility is neutrality. 3, creation and implementation of trainings and documents for staff on how to respond to identity-based complaints, resources we can direct patrons to when they have complaints. 4, mandatory ED&I training for all board members. And 5, improved prior communication with the Queer Affinity Group and increased inclusivity in decision-making in regards to LGBTQ+ issues moving forward. Please also see our expanded statement and list of relevant resources, which has been emailed to you prior to this meeting. Sincerely, Jackson County Library Services, Queer Affinity Group.
Juniper Spalding.
My statements have already been made, so I'm going to cede my time. Thank you.
Indigo Magana.
Hello, my name is Indigo. I just kind of wanted to reiterate what the previous speaker said, which was that I think kind of what the banner represented was a safe space. It's obviously a relatively small thing. It's a single banner on a single railing. But its removal was very much, the harm of that could have been avoided if there had been dialogue and an immediate discussion on what was going to go there instead, if a permanent Pride art display was what was desired. I think until then, until there is some sort of discussion, it's really important that the Pride banner remains. because otherwise it's sort of just, it seems like a blatant sort of, I don't know, like statement. All right, yeah, that's it.
I currently do not see anyone on Zoom with their hands raised. Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak? Without seeing anyone, I will continue going through the list. If at any point someone on Zoom wishes to speak, please just raise your hand and I will absolutely add you to the queue. We go next to Tori McKnight.
My name is Torin McKnight. I'm with the Rogue Valley Pepper Shakers, an organization that counters religious extremism and advocates for and defends queer people and queer spaces. I'm here to talk about the removal of the rainbow banner at the Ashland Library branch. The banner was put up by the Ashland Library in 2019 as a response to the Rogue Valley Salt Shakers, a homophobic and transphobic group of religious extremists planning to protest the library. The banner was put up to show solidarity with queer staff and patrons and to oppose the bigotry that was coming to the library. But now, Library Director Carrie May has decided to cave to the enormous pressure from, my understanding, 2 written complaints over the last almost 5 years that the banner has been up. This decision was made in the middle of Pride Month and was intended to quietly remove the banner on July 1st without anyone noticing. So, if 2 written complaints is enough to get the banner taken down, how many verbal and written complaints is enough for it to stay up? If you truly care about the people this library service serves and the staff of this library service, you should keep the banner up. If this decision stands, this will not be the last time you hear from me and many of the people in this room and online. Stand with queer people and against bigotry. Leave the Pride banner up.
We have Michelle Zhezniak.
Hello, I'm Michelle Ciesnak. I've been a resident of the Rogue Valley since I was 3, and I came out as a trans woman in 2018. I didn't know what I was getting myself into at the time, and I would never change anything or do anything differently. But the amount of hatred, bigotry, and just vile comments, weird looks that I get on a daily basis from every single part of the community is insane, and unless you are visibly queer, you do not understand what it's like. The Ashland Library was probably the very first safe space that I ever had to go. Early on in my transition, before I was still figuring anything out, I still had a full beard. I knew I wanted to at least wear skirts or dresses or something. I had a man follow me in downtown Ashland for several blocks, saying that people like me shouldn't be allowed to exist and someone should murder me so I don't reproduce. I have an 11-year-old kid. I went into the Ashland Library and I saw it wouldn't have been 2018. This would have been just after the pandemic started. So I had been out for a little bit, but I saw the Pride banner in there. The man did not follow me into the library. I went into the bathroom and hid and cried for probably a good 5 or 10 minutes. I haven't really thought about that day since. It's not really a fun thing to think about. I honestly forgot that it had happened because I had tried to surround myself with good people and inclusive people and go to places that had shown themselves to be inclusive. When I saw that the Pride banner had been taken down, I remembered that that had happened. It took me a while to get all the details right. But now I don't think I can even think about the Ashland Library without wondering if I will be safe there again. If somebody, if the person who put up the suggestion saying to remove the flags with a slur, if someone like that came and was following me, and they knew that someone complained about the banner and it got taken down, how much further are they going to take it? At what point is the library no longer a safe space for me? Because to me, I don't feel like it's a safe space. And even if the banner was taken down not in response to bigotry or hatred, but just in response to maybe there's a different group that can have a banner up or something, I would like to say that inclusivity, visibility, representation is not a pie. I don't get less of a slice by somebody else getting one. By taking away our slice of pie, our little tiny banner on the railing at the Ashland Library, that takes away our slice of the pie, and it doesn't give it to anybody else. If there's an inclusive display that is going to be replacing that one, as the sign that's up there right now says, why was it not made ready? And why was the banner taken down before it was ready? That tells me that the reason was not to replace it with a more inclusive design. The plan was just to take down the banner, and that is just a reason that was given to satisfy the queer people. And that's unacceptable, because that's not what happened. And that's not what's happening, because if that were what you wanted to do, was to replace it with something more inclusive, then you would have consulted with the queer community about this, and you would have left it up until something better could be put up there. Thank you very much.
And the last person on the list, unless there is someone on Zoom, I will give the last call. The last person on the list that I have, I will check the list in the back, but the last person on the list that I have is Les Harper.
Les Harper, born and raised in the Valley. As a matter of fact, this is about the waterfalls in this building. Born and raised in the family, I saw the library being built, and when they opened and those waterfalls were going, I mean, it was the crown jewel of gave the whole building its ambiance, and it's just really sad that it's not going, they're not going now, and I think that they should. I mean, they were beautiful. Oh, they were beautiful when they were created, and they should be able to be enjoyed by everyone. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
1 second, I'm going to just make sure there's one on the list. There's one more. Okay, we have one more person who would like to speak, so come on up.
My grocery list. Thank you for taking time to hear me. My name is Cal Bays, and I think, as you know, I'm here to talk about the waterfalls. And last time I was in here, we talked about the waterfalls as public art, and that it's held in several places in the Northwest, at the SeaTac Airport. It's at Salem Fallen Firefighters Memorial, has the same waterfall feature that this library has out there. So that's what I talked about last time. Today, I wanted to bring up that I have 79 signatures of people who, I have 3 copies here that you can pass around. 79 signatures of people who would like to see the waterfall resurrected and turned on. And as I explained in previous times, that it's not that hard to really turn it on. So in a sense, I'm talking about something else that's been removed too, okay? And the waterfall has been removed, but here we have 79 real people who would like to see it. And I did this in a matter of short time. In 1.5 hours, I had 30 people sign up. Next day, probably the same amount of time, or 2 hours, I had another 30 people, and the previous day, another 30 people came out. So I wanted to present that to the board, that there's 79 people that would like to see this happen. I'd also like to say that it seems like there's some sort of resistance here about the waterfall, where something about, if I dare say, and I'm total support, that the pride flag happened really fast. The waterfall feature has dragged on for over a year, if not getting close to 2 years. And so I'm a little confused by that all, and seems a little bit anemic to me that I can't get answers. I've also asked last time I was here that if you guys, the board, could answer these questions, and nobody has answered these questions. So I'm asking again. I'll give you all of these pass out. And so those are the questions that I would like answered, that could be answered during one of these meetings, or I could be emailed. Thank you. I'm sorry, thank you. So I'd like you to look at those questions and see if they can't be answered. Last of all, I'd like to say is that while I've talked about the 79 people have signed this, and we've talked about this as public art, just the way other things are displayed. And we heard from one person here who really speaks for a lot of other people who would like to say the same thing. So I'd like to take a minute to say, think about the power of a waterfall, right? The sheer power of a waterfall. If any of you have ever thought to go up to the Columbia River and see the waterfalls up there, or you've ever taken the time to walk behind a waterfall, it's really a powerful feature. And what's behind our waterfall? It's a library. That's pretty powerful. That's a wow, right? A wow in anybody's books. Okay, thank you.
We've got one extra copy here.
I know it well.
Thank you. Okay. So for the people that took their time and effort in preparing and coming and speaking with us today, the board will not be discussing this any further today. The board will be discussing it at our next board meeting. So that's kind of August, yeah. We'll get it for you in just a second.
21st. It will be on a Wednesday.
Right, yeah, we're changing board meeting times. It'll still be the 4 p.m.
Yes, if you go to our website, they are always issued notice in advance. You can also sign up for notification of any board meetings.
So anyway, the board will be discussing it then. And again, thank you for your time and being here and expressing your concerns. Okay. And don't feel uncomfortable leaving.
Talk into the mic,
okay.
Please.
It's difficult trying to talk to
I
people you can't look
understand.
at, but
For a few minutes, that if anybody wanted to leave at this time, we
Okay.
can let them get out of here without causing a
Disrupting.
disturbance to the
Yeah.
rest of the meeting.
okay. Are we ready to go? Okay. So moving on to reports, the library director's report, Carrie May, everybody received the printed report in your packet. And Carrie will give some highlights, or if people have questions.
Yep, as I was just flipping through here, I realized that last month we had several fun visitors, from boats to bears to boas, or some kind of snake. I did not come to that program because not my thing. But we really have enjoyed our summer reading programs this summer with the Read, Renew, Repeat theme. And I believe the statistics for the end of the first month were included somewhere. Yes. Sorry, it's been a while since I've actually read the report. I also want to take a moment to celebrate our big, hairy, audacious goal last year, which was to increase our physical circulation by 25%. While we fell short of that goal, I'm going to get this wrong now because all we included in the packet was the monthly increase, but over the course of the year, our circulation increase was still in the double digits. And when other library systems around the country are reporting a decrease in circulation and that they have not recovered post-COVID, it's really great to see our physical collections getting so much attention. And that graph you see in the report is for our final push in the month of June to try to get a final push in the month of June. So that was a very exciting thing, and staff are exhausted. They said, please don't make the same goal next year.
Anything else?
And just some exciting things coming later this week. We have redesigned our library's homepage in response to some of the feedback that we've received on navigability and accessibility of that page. And so that will launch here by the end of the week. And Val, do you have that to pull? We have a snapshot of it. So the information will be updated because the snapshot was taken a few months ago, but you'll see at the top of the page, there's 4 drop-down menus for books and more, services, learn, events, and about. And you can also see that I don't know how to count because that's actually 5. And then more static, splashy buttons with some of our featured programs and library services going on. So we're excited to have that launch later this week. So just keep hitting refresh until you see the new page. Are there any questions about anything that is in the director's report this month?
I was just going to comment on a couple of things that I thought sounded great. One, the group in Central Point where the high school students did their senior project to collect a whole bunch of children's and teen books for the little free libraries that the Central Point Friends take care of, was wonderful. I know they've got at least several of their little free libraries in the big park that people can kind of use in the center of town. And also, partly because the Phoenix program on menstrual hygiene products was very informative. I think, I'm a nurse, it's something I probably should have been aware of, that would be a hardship for people that don't have resources. So I thought, what an outstanding idea to make those products available for people and kind of educating people that needed some help in that area. So I thought that was wonderful and real informative for me.
Thank you. Any other comments or observations from the director's reports? Thank you.
Okay. Jackson County Library Foundation. Ooh.
That her portion of the report was introducing her new board member.
Oh, okay.
And she is currently taking care of something upstairs.
Okay. Okay. Got it. It's nice to actually see her in person. Okay, the May 2024 financial report, Heather Scott. Thank you.
So I really don't have a lot to report this month. There hasn't been a lot of change in the financials since last month. We've been doing a lot of cleanup and reconciling in preparation for the upcoming audit. And so there were some adjustments here and there, but overall, not much change from last time. We're still on track. Don't see anything that seems to be out of line, and we're hoping to end the year in the same manner. Yes.
Question, and is this thing on? Yes. Forgive my allergies, they're getting worse as I sit here. Who is the entity that audits JCLD?
KDP.
Gotcha, thank you.
They're scheduled for the week of August 26th to be on site.
Thank you.
It's always.
Thank you. Okay. Southern Oregon Historical Society report. Is Jan?
She would join via Zoom, but I do not see her. So.
Okay.
We may.
She did submit a report, so
Right.
if there's any questions from that, we can get those back to her if needed.
Sounded like lots of good stuff going on there. And
Photographs is incredible. Pretty cool thing.
okay. So, we have a person in person. Okay, I wasn't sure what the timing was. Okay, Facilities Master Plan presentation, and we have Jill Ayers with us in person.
Thank you. You know what? If I got offended by every time someone spelled my last name wrong, I'd never leave the house.
Well, this was your last name we spelled wrong and not your first name, right? So just a preamble while Val's pulling up the presentation. So just to recap, you all know that we hired Group 4 planners to conduct a facilities master plan. And so after, 9 months, I think, of work, 8 or 9 months of work, they have presented us with the final facilities master plan report, and as well as a memo regarding the preliminary capital budgets. And so Jill has prepared a presentation today to summarize the findings of all the things, and is here for any questions and feedback you might have.
Excellent. Thank you for the introduction. I am Jill Ayers. I am a principal with Group 4 Architecture Research and Planning. We have had the privilege of working with the library and your staff and stakeholders and communities for the last probably 10 or 11 months on this project, but
Time flies when you're having fun.
close enough. And I'm thrilled to be with you here today to share some of the highlights of the process and the plan that you have in your packet, and then get into some conversations about the budget. So next, Val. And please feel free to stop me if you have any questions or want some clarification along the way, but there will be time at the end of my hopefully brief presentation for discussion then. So next. We set out in this project to develop a vision of the future of high-performing, inclusive, and sustainable library facilities for Jackson County Library in 2040, and to recommend strategies and improvement projects to achieve that vision. The purpose was to give the library a guide for investing and reinvesting in your facilities over the next 10 to 15 years. We stopped short of redesign of any spaces or buildings. That would be part of the implementation plan moving forward from this point, along with all kinds of other wonderful things like continuing to talk with the community about the vision for each library and for the library facilities in the future. Next, we started last fall. The Group 4 team visited all 15 of your libraries. We looked at issues related to how well they meet community needs, how well they support modern library service, including the things that are in your strategic plan, the goals that the library has for service. And I wanted to say that library staff are a huge help for us in understanding the needs and opportunities here in Jackson County. More than 150 staff, very generous with sharing their thoughts and ideas with us through a detailed community survey about the library and the community and individual facilities, as well as interviews and workshops with them as well. It was very important to the library in this process to engage Jackson County stakeholders, partners, and communities in the conversation, continuing the discussions that had begun before with the strategic plan. You can see that bottom section where there were multiple opportunities and multiple methods for participating. Next.
By our count, we found that more than 2,400 people participated in this process through these multiple methods. We had an online survey and a pop-up version that was taken out by staff to various community locations. We got more than 2,200 responses to those. We did keep an eye on the community survey, and we did get responses from every zip code in Jackson County, a few. So we were really trying to make sure we got, it wasn't just people in Medford, but it was throughout the county. There was a strategic vision workshop in February that some of you participated in. Wonderful turnout of city, county, library leaders, corporate and nonprofit partners, other community stakeholders and representatives, and some really wonderful ideas and hopefully new partnerships came out of that day that are going to keep bearing fruit as the library goes into the future. Next. And then in April, we had community listening sessions at 4 libraries, including right here in this room, to review the emerging findings, the emerging recommendations of the planning process. And we had an impromptu pop-up visioning session in the teen space upstairs that day as well. Next. So what did we hear? We heard that the communities here in Jackson County really value the libraries. Literacy and lifelong learning is, of course, an enduring value and service that the library provides. Your library system is actually one of the busiest in the state. Per capita, you get more visits per year than Multnomah County and Deschutes Public Library, which are the other 2 of the top 3 libraries in Oregon. So well done. Expanded programming, one of the priorities in your strategic plan. Your communities respond very positively to these things, and through the survey we found that they want even more of that. They want more of these opportunities to engage with the library in person and to engage with each other. That one of the areas of particular appeal that survey respondents said they wanted more of is connecting with other people in the community around shared interests. There's a huge role for the library in creating the space for this to happen. Technology is one that's very important. There's many, go away pop-ups. There are many areas of Jackson County that don't have access to high-speed internet at home, which I struggle to be on a plane for 2 hours without Wi-Fi. Living without it all the time is hard to imagine. Your Wi-Fi statistics, again, compared to the rest of the county and some of the other big libraries here in Oregon, are through the roof. We've heard that people come sit in the parking lot round the clock to be on your Wi-Fi, to access communication, stay in touch with the world, be part of Zoom calls, all kinds of things. So it's very, very important. And certainly not least, we heard just again and again how much people really love and appreciate the talents and the dedication of library staff to making a positive difference in every customer's life every time they walk in the library. So the vision for Jackson County Library Services, spaces and facilities include libraries that are great looking, they're well maintained with lots of space for people, both inside and out of the facilities. Libraries that are comfortable and accessible and easy to use for diverse visitors of all ages. Libraries that can not just withstand, but continue to serve during extreme hot and cold weather, low air quality days, power interruptions, and other community disruptions. And libraries that can continue to evolve and adapt services and spaces over time as the communities evolve and grow as well. So how well do your facilities align with this vision that we built together with you in the community? The library partners with Jackson County Facilities Department to take really, really good care of your libraries. They really are in very good condition. There's a very low backlog of deferred maintenance, which just means the list of things that are broken or need fixing right now or needed fixing, last year. They're in really good shape. However, most of your buildings are about 20 years old, which is the point in a building's life where it starts needing major work. Those of you who own a home know you need to start thinking about your roof. Sometimes your mechanical systems need some upgrading. There's things that need to be done, and that is ahead of you here with a lot of your buildings. There are several libraries in your system where there's a notable shortage of space relative to the local community size and the demand for library service, which puts a lot of pressure on those facilities and the rest of the facilities in the network that are trying to, pick up that overflow. The Medford Library here that we are in has seen a lot of change since it opened 20 years ago. There's been strong community growth. There's been an unprecedented evolution in library services and technology, just generally. There's been more change in the last 20 years than I think any other 20-year period in library history. And then this building was originally designed to be a joint library with Rogue Community College, which has since sort of moved out of this building and the partnership in the same way. So there's opportunities here. When this library was designed, the library was a county department as well, and the county was providing all kinds of support services that the library as a district has had to bring on, IT, HR, facilities, lots of things that the library has had to make space for in this building to function as an independent district. And then there's just expanded operations over time to support countywide growth, new services, outreach. IT is much bigger than anybody thought it would be in the early 2000s when this building was designed. So all kinds of change for this building. Next. The recommendations for your libraries fall into 3 general categories. There's recommendations for new buildings, maintenance and renovation, and strategies that extend access to the public. So given the age and condition of most of your buildings, most of them are recommended for maintenance and renovation at some level. As needed to modernize service and realign spaces with community needs and priorities. Renovation provides some wonderful opportunities to increase the sustainability of these buildings and their resilience, as well as to look at ways to perhaps make the sites more usable, insert public art, all kinds of other things that will make these buildings ready for the next 20 years of service. On the topic of new can mean ground up new construction starting on a new site, but it can also mean adaptive reuse. I've got the image here in the lower right is of a branch library in the San Francisco Bay Area that started its life as a Walgreens drugstore. And there's all kinds of projects that we've done a grocery store, we've done a pizza parlor, we've turned a roller rink into a library, and even a brewery. So there are ways to do this, and there are reasons to do this as well. So think creatively. And then I threw in, I'll just go back for a second. The lower left image, for those who were at the facilities committee meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I was struggling to find an image of some public art that was going in. I got this image this morning of the public art, those colorful columns that are shown in white right now outside the main library in Cincinnati. That's what that image is. So. Next. Okay, so the recommendations for Jackson County Library facilities by 2040, the ones in green, shown in green here, are recommended for maintenance and renovation. Central Point, shown in purple, is recommended to get a larger new library that's comparable in scale to Ashland. The 2 communities are comparable in population size, and they really should be shoulder to shoulder in branch library space as well. Butte Falls and Jacksonville are both recommended to be expanded to about double their current size. Both of those will have huge impacts for those communities, even though that expansion amount is different. The meeting room at Eagle Point is recommended for expansion. It's the small size of it is a particular constraint there. There's also a recommendation for a new operations center that can provide more suitable space for the library's system-wide support functions, and perhaps enable some of the staff space that's in this building to be recaptured, repurposed for public service, which would be effectively an expansion of public service here in this building without moving the walls out at all. I wanted to note that the purple square that says ops on here is just plopped on the map. That's not a specific recommendation for location necessarily. It's just meant to say something that's relatively central to the community, to the county with good access to the highways, et cetera, will be a very good location for that. Carrie's volunteering to host the services at her house. And then South Ashland, we've got a little square here for that too. It's an opportunity for some kind of extended access strategy to expand service and reduce the pressure on the Ashland Library, which can't expand on that constrained site. But there's, you don't need to replace that. But if you could put in something else that takes some of that pressure off, that would be wonderful. It probably is more than book lockers, but it isn't necessarily a full branch either. And so we're calling it extended access opportunity, and that's something that the library can keep an eye on. Next, before we get to capital budgets, there's a lot of conversation about the timing of these things. even in a world where you had unlimited funding to do all of these projects, you would not want to do them all at the same time. Decisions would need to be made about the order in which they could and should happen. There's all kinds of different ways to look at that. And these are some of the considerations listed here down the left that would go into that conversation. This table is the one that is in the report, but again, it's just one way to do it. This list was developed prioritizing, in particular, the minimizing the geographic gaps in access during construction. Don't want to close two that are next to each other at the same time. Want to make sure people don't have to go all the way across the county. Impact of escalation. Your bigger projects are going to have the biggest impact from escalating costs on those. So taking care of those early, there's some logic to that in moderating the effects of escalation. And then, where the community needs, do you want to build capacity early? Do you want to put a new central point in place so that that can take some of the pressure off this building when it's closed for renovation? Those are some of the things that went into this group 1, group 2, group 3. Doesn't mean that any of these projects is more important than the others. It's just purely a conversation about the right sequence in which they would happen. And then next, we have the final report, which was a delight to write, and I hope you find it a delight to read. There's this and so much more detail is in that document. I know you may not have had a chance to get all the way through it before this meeting, but I wanted to see quickly before we move on to budgeting, if you have any questions about anything that is in the report, any questions about specific recommendations for any of the branches or anything else, I'm happy to answer those at this time.
I have one quick question that I was probably addressed in here somewhat, but since staff are obviously very invested in the facilities they work in, I know this was presented to staff prior to it coming to the board. So can you kind of talk a little bit about, I mean, I know staff were engaged through a survey that they replied to and some direct conversation, but kind of the rollout and feedback on the plan, how exactly did that happen?
Did we present this to the staff before the board?
We presented at the all hands
The all
meeting.
that's right. I can't believe I forgot to put that in.
April?
We did. Yes. Yeah.
I don't know that there were very many, questions or feedback, just observation.
We got, I do remember there was additional kind of emphasis on the opportunities for buildings to be made more sustainable, more resilient. Can we put in solar panels? Can we put in really appropriate landscaping so that it's low water and appropriate for this? That's very important. That was one of the themes that came out of that. And then there was good discussion around the opportunity for the South Ashland extended access strategy. Does that mean it's just a book locker like the other two that, the library has put in so far? And the answer is no. There's all kinds of things that could be. It could be partnership. It can be embedded librarian in a partner location. There's just the library world is awash with creative solutions for getting services out to the community and making sure that they're accessible. So that was.
There's also some discussion, I think, about the timing and the sequencing and some of that logic of the groupings that I think the staff in general supported the way they were grouped together. But, if we're looking at bond measures and that kind of thing, looking at what's going to be a shiny project we can do in round 1 that will help, people feel better about voting yes for a bond measure.
Yes.
Question, and I apologize, I'm going to get a t-shirt here shortly. Does the library currently hold any properties it's not using? Like a parking lot that's a separate tax lot, or any assets like that that are not being utilized?
No.
Or using it?
April feels so long ago, I can't believe. I know. Totally forgot about that. But yes, since you reminded me now, I remember.
So the this is, again, I did manage to read through all of the
Good,
this
good,
earlier
glad.
today. So the operations center would be services like human resources, IT.
Could be, yeah. There's different
That's kind of
models
the
of this, different models of this in the library world. There are models where it is more purely a sorting center, technical services, kind of very focused on physical materials. And then there's other models where it's sort of all of the system-wide services, HR, IT, administration, all in one place. And then this building becomes pure branch. Mhm.
Right. But for example, right now, we do have a centralized collection development department. So all of the materials for all the branches come in here first and then get redistributed. So if we were to put that into the centralized operations center at a centralized location, that could expedite the materials going back out to the branches and give them a little more space for getting all that work done.
That's something that a lot of library systems are looking at again now. You know, this function was put in downtown of the system because it made sense. It was in the heart of the system. But as downtowns get more crowded and parking gets more difficult to find and traffic gets worse, it is not uncommon to start thinking outside of downtown for these services that really kind of benefit from a big loading dock at places where bigger trucks can get in and out. And you're in good company in considering it. Any other questions on that before we start talking about money? Yes.
When it comes to that centralized operations, sort of a center, have you seen library districts or library entities share a space with another organization, whether not-for-profit or public, that also needed a facility of the same zoning?
A facility of the same size?
Zoning and allowed use. Mhm.
I'm going to say I haven't seen it, but I don't know that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I can't think of a reason why that would be universally a bad idea. With any partnership, it's just important to find something that's truly complementary, and it isn't, one is really benefiting and the other one's kind of suffering from it. But that's the case. I'm intrigued by what you have in mind.
Thank you.
That's
okay. Durable, like the plan to incorporate RCC into the design, and with a partnership that was great while it was here.
Yeah.
But
my question is kind of around, was there public input for the need for an operations center in any way, or is it mostly just staff?
That was mostly staff-driven. That's not something we put back before the community. I'm trying to think of how we would ask that question of the community.
Was there a problem in the speed with which, the collections are being distributed and the routing of the couriers and that kind of thing? I don't sense a problem there, but that's kind of where I was going with the question. How do I prioritize this need for an ops center versus the need for a new central point library, et cetera?
From the flip side of being able to reallocate the space from staff space to public space within this space is where some of that was also being driven, that there are ways that we could take more of the footprint of this building and make it into public space and be able to serve growing community needs with additional space within the facility by the footprint of staff being reduced.
And I'm just trying to work that out. I mean, this library is the largest of them all, of course, and we did, pick up the space that RCC was using, and I'm not sure we actually have a great need for more public space in this library, but that's what I'm trying to understand from
Well, that would be something to engage the community on, is the opportunities for things in this building, and that was beyond where that was more detailed than we got in this process, was if we thought about this building, talked with the community about the other kinds of things that they would like to see in this building, what are those, what might those be?
What did you come up with on those? I mean, was there anything needed at this building that we don't have from the public?
There is, it's It's a good question. You put me on the spot for remembering this. There were ideas about things that people saw opportunities to think of space in here differently. New services, reorganization of services for more easier use, missed opportunities or places in the building that feel sort of empty. Some of this was public, some of this was staff saying this would be a great opportunity for our strategic plan calls for increasing our library of things. Like, what's the right place in this building to really celebrate those things, make them available for people so they can see them, know that they exist, know where to go to check them out, et cetera. There's always a need for additional meeting, small group study space, larger space than this for events. Yes, right, small business, entrepreneurship. So, but I didn't come up with the comprehensive list of things that are needed in this building.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that would be my question. It seems like we do have a lot of space in this building that's not hyper-utilized.
I mean, my comment about the priority would be if you are going to do a big renovation of this building because it's needed to take care of the life cycle things that are going to need to be taken care of in this building, you would want that to include the renovation of this building, the modernization for service. And so if you are going to do that, you'd want to take the things out that you think you're going to take out so that you can do that as a comprehensive thing. You're not going to want to come back and do it and then do it again 5 years later if you bring an operations center online. Anything else? We can come back to it as we talk about money too. So next, Val, please. Okay, so introducing these budgets, the memorandum that you got, I can't stress enough that these are preliminary. These are very order of magnitude. The purpose of these was to help the library district plan its implementation strategy. I think I mentioned earlier there was no design associated with this, so there's a lot of work ahead to dial in the numbers for each specific project. But doing that much work in this plan would have taken another year and a lot more, work than we needed to do to get you to this point. We worked with a cost consultant, ACC, out of the Portland area. They developed a range of dollar per square foot costs for the kinds of improvements that are recommended in your plan, new renovation, light maintenance, based on their experience with other projects, public work, similar size, similar scale in Oregon. This is the same approach and the same level of cost information that Group 4 and ACC together gave Multnomah County Library and Deschutes Public Library for their plans, which set them up for the next stages in successful implementation. These numbers too, they are in today's dollars. We did not, because I showed you the implementation groups, but there's no time associated with that. Those are still somewhere in the future and it's hard to escalate, but escalation is a real cost and needs to be worked into these budgets. So all the numbers that are in this memo are, if you were going to do these today, wanted to put that caveat out there quickly. And you'll need to review and update these regularly as you work toward implementation as well. Things change, the construction market changes, opportunities change, so just keep an eye on them. So let's go to the next slide, Val, please, and talk a little bit more about what is and isn't included in these budgets. Our goal for these is to, as much as possible, give you everything that we can think of that would be part of this capital program. There is the cost of building and site construction, but there's the other things in there that are real costs to furniture and shelving, the design and engineering services that you'll need for each of these buildings, permitting and other kinds of project costs. There are unknowns. There are some that we know, like the cost of buying land or acquiring a facility to transform. We didn't know how to budget for that, so those are excluded, but we know that they're not in there. And then there's variety of unknowns. Things always happen during a construction project that you just didn't expect and we can't possibly foresee. Sometimes you find an old burial site, sometimes you find something under the ground that needs to be taken care of. May not scuttle the whole project, but it may add time, which always adds up to dollars somehow. So we accommodated for some of these unknowns by just adding contingencies in for these things to help so that you don't have to start cutting things if something unknown comes up during the project. And then again, escalation. We need to know the timing of these before we can put that in. So let's go to the next slide, Val. This is the table that is basically in the memo, and I just wanted to start kind of with a couple of lines at the top and walk you through how this is laid out. So it's got the branches, a row for each one. We've got the recommendation, which here for Applegate and Ashland are both maintain and renovate. We've got the square feet today and the recommended square feet for 2040 recommended in this plan. In this case, they're both the same because these are just maintain and renovate. And then there's the budget in a range from low to high. In this case, for these two projects, if you do the math, it comes out to about $300 to $385 a square foot all in for these. If we go to the next slide, Val, there's a couple more. We start getting into the ones that are in the different categories: Butte Falls, renovate and expand, Central Point new, and mostly renovation at Eagle Point with a little bit of expansion to make that meeting room a more comfortable size. The Central Point Library budget is new construction. We talked a little bit about the ability to adapt other buildings. Like I said, there's really good reasons to do that. You may not save any money on it. There are situations where you get in there, the grocery store I mentioned, felt like they were going to save money, and then you start looking in there and it needs a new roof and it needs all kinds of things. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but I'm just going to caution you not to like discount your budget, even if you think you're going to do it as an adaptive reuse. Like, hold the new budget. You're a hero later if you can finish for less than what you thought. Next slide is the whole table. Down the very bottom line is that new operations center, which could be, again, adaptive reuse. The bottom line here is rough order of magnitude budget, 103 to 128 million for the master plan recommended projects. So that includes the life cycle maintenance, service modernization, sustainability improvements to all of the facilities, plus through the expansions, adding about 30% more space for public service and your system-wide support functions. What is not included in this table, like I mentioned earlier, that South Ashland opportunity. What is that? We don't know yet. It's hard to define it and put a number to it. So what you may want to do is decide on an allowance, an amount that you're willing to spend on that. And then when that opportunity comes up, when that partnership comes up, you're ready to move and take advantage of it. Next, let's talk about escalation first. Oh, yes.
Slide.
Yes.
Are you just taking some sort of a number and multiplying it times a square foot to get the cost?
That is essentially the methodology.
Same number for all of the different
No,
locations, different numbers?
It's different for new versus renovation, and then there's some of these where if it feels like it's a little bit of a lighter maintenance project than more of a detailed, in-depth renovation project, it's a slightly different number. Okay. But that's part of where that range comes from is I can't tell you from right now exactly where it'll be. My goal is that the high end of the column is a really good number for you. It's the best I can do right now.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
It did.
I have another question.
Okay.
Because on the Jacksonville, in the paper or the narrative, it says to maintain, expand, but then here it says new.
Does it? Okay, so Jacksonville is an expand. And the question is that we couldn't get to is, can it be expanded on its current site? Can the building be expanded? Can it be an expansion project? Or would it need to move to a new site that could accommodate a bigger building? For the purposes of the budget, it's budgeted as the latter. You're going to need to replace the building. Maybe on the current site, it may be that the existing building just doesn't work as an expansion. That's why this budget is there. I don't want to surprise you in a bad way later. I want you to be like, oh, we could do this for much less than that. Best bad news is old bad news. That was the best advice I got from one of our former Group 4 principals. Yes? Is it what?
Historic in any way?
It was built to the historic standards, but the challenges of that one is that when they started the site prep, they discovered that there was an old mine shaft underneath it. And so that's why I'm not sure with expansion what other below the ground adjustments would need to be made.
Yes.
I had a question about the. Is it on? Okay, great, thanks. I had a question about some of the smaller footprint facilities. I touch infrastructure and construction sometimes in my work.
Good.
And a part of me is wondering, for some of the smaller footprints, would it make sense when we get to the design portions to look at replacing an entire building with a steel building structure that is a shell that is versatile or modular, or connecting several modular units together and then configuring the space for whatever the needs are. For example, I'm looking at Butte Falls Library, $2.3 million for something that's 3,100 square feet. Can we buy an old structure and move it to the site? Just for example, do
It's funny that you mentioned that one, because Butte Falls was a building that was moved to this site.
Great.
It's absolutely possible,
I
yes.
appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for any of these, when you get into site-specific design, there will be an opportunity to step back and say, does this make sense? Does it make sense to spend the money this way? Or is there some other strategy that would get us this or better on this site? And this is kind of what I'm hoping gives you that flexibility once you get there.
What I'm remembering from reading was actually the building must not be so permanently placed that it talked about moving the building forward on the property and adding.
Seems like it could be moved again. They
Yeah.
moved it on a truck from however far away. Just pull it forward on the site and build behind it or some other way. I think it was.
Our hamburgers stand.
Yeah. Which I can't tell by looking at it now, like the transformation is really good.
Yeah.
It's just a super small little building. Let's talk about escalation. Escalation fluctuates a lot year to year. It just, it always does. Historically, over the long term, Engineering News Record maintains an index back to the beginning of the 20th century. Over time, long term, it tends to average like 2 to 3% per year. But again, like year by year, it changes all the time. You can see here that between 1990 and 2000, it was about 2.7% per year. Between 2000 and 2020, it was about 2.9% per year, but this, doesn't quite give you the story that in the late 2010s, the numbers were starting to spike quite a lot. We were seeing a lot of escalation in 18, 19. 2020 happened, COVID hit, we were all prepared for everything to fall, silent for a while. It did not. Everybody kept building. Supply chain was interrupted, labor was hard to come by, materials were hard to come by, and escalation went quite high. It got to be almost 9% per year between 2020 and 2023, which is a lot. And it's hard to know what's going to happen from here. The crystal ball is always completely dark to us. So next, please, Val. There's different ways this could go. Our cost consultant recommends just assuming 5% per year through 2030, which is a lot, but it's hard to argue that it would be different than that. Nobody really knows. It could come back down to something that feels more like a historical average of 2 to 3% over time. It could do something in between. It could fall flat. I will say that the construction market, as much as it escalates, it rarely de-escalates. It never seems to get any cheaper. It just stays flat for a while. So all of that is to say that the let's wait and see almost never benefits in this situation. It is usually good to just pick the date where you want to start doing it, plan for escalate to that point, and keep moving. It's my best recommendation for making this happen. And that, I think, was my whole presentation. Any questions on that? Yes.
I have a question for the legal team. Do we need to adopt a facilities plan as a board, or it's a document that just exists now?
I don't know that we need to adopt it now. If you're not ready to adopt it now, I would not adopt it now, but I would think documenting that it occurred makes sense at this point.
The way we had put it on the agenda was for a design discuss, I've got construction terms on the brain, design build, inform discuss, and then if there were major questions that we had that we wanted Jill and the Group 4 team to research and get back to us, then we could have that presentation again in August. But if the information as presented seems to meet the needs of what we requested with this plan, then, kind of a formal acceptance, I think, is what I was thinking, or adoption.
Thank you.
What are people's thoughts on that? Is there information you would like? Okay, Kevin?
To the extent that we just adopt the plan, and I mean, I'm okay with that. I think before committing ourselves to doing any of this stuff is, from my understanding, down the road, if that's everybody else's understanding.
Right.
Where we'd have a lot more time to discuss it. I don't think I have many more questions on the plan itself, really, but.
There's a lot of work to do between accepting the plan and breaking ground on a new Central Point Library.
Great, let's start tomorrow.
Figuring out what we're going to do as a renovation or a refreshment on all the little branches. I mean, I see this as like a first step. And from here, it seems to me we've got gobs of work to do with a variety, with staff and anyway, I think this is just step one.
And you've got, in very recent memory, Multnomah County and Deschutes Public both went through this. They would be more than happy to talk to you about, the things that they felt like they go visit, talk with them about what they feel like they did right. There was a lot of additional work following this point on the projects and communications with the public, getting the word out about the need and getting people excited about the opportunities for the future, refining the projects. Both of them had a measure on the ballot in presidential 2020 that I think together 600 million.
If we can't get the community excited, we ain't going to get a bond issue for $128 million bucks. So.
Right. So as you say, it takes work, but it's fun work. Like, you get to talk with the people about the library and all the wonderful things that the library can do, with these reinvestments in the facilities. Stewardship, it's helping prepare for the future, a more sustainable and resilient future for the community. It's wonderful opportunities for people to build these connections with each other that they asked for through the survey, and create this wonderful foundation for the future in the next generation. I think it's fun. It is hard work.
Well, if there are not specific questions that we need any more information on, then it sounds like we are in a place that we could have a motion to accept the facilities master plan as presented.
Need a motion, though. I guess I don't know what we're accepting. Because it feels like we're just starting the conversation, like this is just the groundwork for conversation, but.
In that we received this final report.
We just don't do that.
Well, we contracted with them to provide it. We spent pretty good chunk of money to get them to produce it. And I think accepting it's probably the next step. And then I mean, accepting the plan doesn't commit us to doing anything.
It's the same thing that we do in the auditing process. We accept we
The
accept
audit.
the report somebody else wrote and presented to us. So same thing. Do you want to explain better? Yeah, that's how we do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't at this time know what the proposal was in terms of like what you've contracted for as the deliverable that you then need to accept something or not. But it would seem in this process, if you're not accepting that you're going to do anything on it, I think just documenting that you accepted the plan is fine, or that you could even, your motion could be as limited as I received the plan, or we have received the plan and we acknowledge the presentation. But certainly if you have reservations, I wouldn't put anything down that you don't want to then go off of. But I don't see any harm in acknowledging on the record that you've gotten the report and accept the findings as presented.
Did we also ask for some kind of a modeling of the buildings that we have as they exist now? Or was that through another?
We opted not to request that information.
Not to do that?
Because I think
Okay.
you price that out as an additional add to do the 3D renderings of existing 3D, not little cube drawings, but the
We would be happy to do
Blueprints.
any of that for you,
Right,
but
but it
it's
is
not
the
in our
next-
basic contract.
That was my question. All right, thanks.
There's a fly. I promise I'm not.
Just dismissing.
Just, no, we didn't ask for that.
Accepted. I'm sorry, I took your thunder.
Question.
Go ahead.
Was the board the one that authorized the library director to enter into the contract? Oh, okay, there we go. So
Yeah.
there's the closure and the loop coming together for me. Thank you. I was missing that.
The plan as presented. So discussion, and Marissa, are you concerned?
Wording says accept the plan. I would just say like, we have acknowledged that we have received the information. Because to me, you're saying like, yes, we're going to do everything that's there.
No, that's not at all what it says.
Use master plan, so that's what we're accepting, and if you want to call it the final report, but this document is a facilities master plan document.
But it
It's
doesn't
not
mean
the-
we're.
it's not the plan for
accepting
how
the
to-
plan doesn't mean we're doing any of it, actually. It's just a
This is very
suggestion
specific.
for, they looked at the circumstances and went, this is what we would recommend. And we can accept their recommendation or not.
Suggested wording, you could change the motion to be, the board acknowledges the final report and accepts the final report without further plan to execute, without committing to any execution of the report.
On my motion, and you can go for it if you want.
Sure, what you said, yeah. We accept the report as presented, or, sorry.
That you acknowledge the final report and accept the report as presented without consenting to execute the report. Yes. Without committing to the execution of the report.
So what is the final wording of the motion?
For the minutes.
Okay, that the board acknowledges receipt of the final report. Do you want me to name out the report? Of the facilities master plan, and accepts the findings as presented and reserves the right to later discuss execution or implementation.
I'll second.
Questions or discussion on that? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Jill. Okay. On to the next. Extension of the library director's contract. Carrie's contract was up for renewal on July 1, and we successfully completed her evaluation. We are
Copy the amendment. I
Oh,
forgot to
okay.
give it to you before the meeting, sorry.
Okay. We are recommending extending Carrie's contract for the current fiscal year with a 3.6% cost of living allowance, I guess is the term, which is consistent with all other JCLS staff, and a 3% salary increase, which is also consistent with other library staff. And I guess that's, if there was any, Carrie does, we do now have a copy of her contract if anybody wants to look at that.
That's the proposed amendment to the contract, yes.
I'd like to see that.
It's 2 copies, so.
Oh, it's 2 copies, okay. So if people want a minute to look at that, or if you have any questions now.
I have a question as to when the evaluation was completed.
June. It was at the June, that was the executive
Late
session
June.
that's in the.
Gotcha. A question for legal then, since I was not a part of the board yet, is it appropriate for me to abstain? I would like to abstain from that since I was not a part of that process.
Yes, I believe that's appropriate.
Thank you.
So what's the amendment? Just the amendment the amount of the.
And there also is a memo in your packet.
On page 108.
I thought this was something new that she was just putting in.
That has kind of a concise statement of,
Yeah, I thought this was something new we were just being presented. It's not, so.
no. Not abbreviated into a memo.
Before we discuss in any case, right?
Okay.
I'll move approval of the contract extension.
I'll second. I think that's okay for me to do. Okay, now, any further questions, discussion?
I have a problem with the salary increase just because it's too high, especially given how our voters responded recently. So they were like apparently unhappy with the Jackson County Commissioner's salary, which I think it was like 135, and everybody voted to bring that down. So given those sentiments of the community, I'd say yes to the extension of the contract, but no to the raises.
Just to clarify, in the contract, I am, the 3.6 COLA is part of my compensation and part of my contract.
Question?
I just wanted to add context about the recent Jackson County voters ballot outcome. I believe the question on the ballot was contingent upon there becoming 5 commissioners total and not 3, and therefore that was a budgetary measure that was on the ballot contingent upon that number increasing to 5. So just a clarification, that the ballot measure failed, therefore the county has not yet taken any action, nor has it presented a plan to follow that particular outcome. Thank you.
I'm fully aware of that, but again, it was the sentiment of the voters, so obviously they're not happy with people making such large salaries.
I'm also not an elected official in the same way that county commissioners are. I am more comparable to Danny Jordan's position at the county than I am to a commissioner.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, well, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Raise your hand since there are less of us here now. Okay. Okay, sure. Okay. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. The motion passes. Okay, district organizational items for 2025. Those also were in the very end of your packet and included our change in meeting day and time to the third Wednesday of each month at 4 p.m. at the Medford Library, unless otherwise noted. And an option to attend virtually is required by state law, so that, of course, will continue to happen. Should I go through, I'll kind of talk through these, or don't?
So these are kind of the standard ones that we've done every year. And as we were preparing for this meeting last week, Val and I were like, do we need to do all of those every year? And so we reached out to SDAO, and they said there's no requirement that we do all of this, but they're like, it's not a bad practice. So those are the items that are presented here for meeting date and time. Our auditor of record is KDP, not ADP. That's an alarm company. Our insurance of record, our newspaper of record, and our recognized in the library board is our local contracts review board. So to Marta's question earlier about reviewing the contract and authorizing me to sign it, that's covered in that as well.
Okay. Any questions, concerns? I think this part is fairly straightforward.
We need to actually adopt these and formally do that, or just recognize?
Approve.
The change.
Okay. We could have a motion to approve the district organizational items for fiscal year 25. Okay, thank you. Okay, all in favor? They're all up, Val. Okay, thanks. You're better at focusing on two things at one time than I would be. Okay, so Jackson County Library District Committee summary and membership lists. Again, this is laid out for you on the page 110, 111. And so if anybody had any concerns or change of heart in terms of where you have committed to serving, I guess I would say on the budget committee, the board is, all of the board members are considered part of the budget committee. So we're not listed there separately, but the whole board is part of that group. The Rogue Valley Council of Governments, the Jackson County Library District Board is considered a board member of Rogue Valley COG. And so we do, a representative of the board does attend those meetings as a board member. Meetings, if I'm remembering the Wednesday correctly, it's the fourth Wednesday.
I think that's right.
I believe the fourth Wednesday at noon. And if you attend in person, it's at their office in Central Point. They do provide lunch. And they also provide a virtual option. So I have attended primarily virtually just because the time has been really difficult with my own schedule. But I mean, it's always an interesting meeting. There are members from lots and lots of other jurisdictions, cities, other organizations that all provide updates, and there generally is a program on some particular either activity or plan that's going on in the community that's reviewed at those meetings. So I don't know what the tradition has been in terms of somebody attending those meetings. I did them for the last year, but I would be delighted if there was somebody else that would be willing to do that, partly just because it's a really hard time for.
Times again, was it
It's
Wednesday
at
noon?
noon, yeah, the fourth Wednesday at 12. It is, I mean, their Zoom setup is really good. I mean, I think they're proficient at operating the meeting, so.
You want?
Do you want to split the?
Sure, let's split it, yeah.
Whichever one is available, consider us
Yeah.
both as a backup.
Okay. Probably what would be easiest, I could let the person who sends out the scheduling stuff, I could let her know to send it to both of you. They do good noticing, and they do provide, their agenda and all the information you need, so.
We talk around where everybody
Yes.
reports on what's going on their organization.
Yeah, there is
The
an
idea-
expectation that you
You wouldn't
come
have to save much,
with-
but there's,
yeah.
when, they might be interested in our facilities master plan, or, stuff like that.
And I mean, even shared things like at one time, there were a number of people looking for, a finance manager in their organization. So people are sharing common concerns as well. So there's always something going on here to report on. I mean, I've never had a problem coming up with something, so. Okay, that's wonderful. And media contact currently, because I think that traditionally has been the president of the board, so I honestly, I don't know that in the last year I've been contacted by the media, but responsiveness to comments from the public often, I think often the comments that we get go to the whole board. They're usually not directed to just me, and often Carrie is included on some of that communication. So generally, Carrie and I communicate if there is need for information that I wouldn't have access to be able to respond to a patron or community member. And sometimes we both provide a response depending on what is most appropriate in the situation. So again, I don't know if other people have been contacted by the media, but typically the official process would be to refer a request from the media to me at this point. So again, it does not come up, so it's not an everyday occurrence, but
New Year's Eve one year, or Christmas Eve one year, I think. You did too, right? Yeah. It has
Minnesota.
happened.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said I was in Minnesota.
Yeah. So, and I think, the possible question there is with the media and community contact person, it has been the president for the past several years. As our advocacy committee is more active, it may make sense for it to be a member of the advocacy committee, which Vicky's also a member of. So, but if anybody has a burning desire to be the primary media contact, we could discuss that too. But that's the whole slate of roles that we're looking to approve today.
Hand up, sorry.
Okay.
Hey, I don't see a ex officio representative for JCLF. Ex officio board member, there's usually a representative. Am I missing it?
Okay, so there's the relationship committee, but Jenny's asking about under other JCLD roles, I believe, is where we've traditionally listed the ex officio member to the foundation board, which has been Susan. Thank you, Jenny, good catch.
So just, is there any distinction between voting members or non-voting members on these committees? Or?
The only one is the ex officio member on the foundation board.
So I'm just seeing
So
on
you don't-
policy, facilities, and data, it looks like they're
So they're-
represent more staff than
Committees.
board members.
Committees would not typically be voting.
We vote to recommend though, right?
Yes.
You bring forward a consensus to
Yes.
the full board for recommendation, so, yeah.
So it's kind of a vote. Is that the way it was intended? I haven't checked out the statute on that or anything.
Statute really doesn't say anything about
On committees? Okay.
So the committees can't take any action, they can direct staff. And so I guess, are you worried that staff, if there's more staff than board members, that our vote outweighs yours?
Yeah.
It's really, the staff representation on the committees is to help give the board committee members sufficient information
Sure,
so that
yeah.
you're able to bring forward a recommendation to the full board that you can stand behind. So it's not that, you tell me you want purple pencils in all the libraries, and I'm like, nope, only red. You have to have sufficient information from me and
I
other staff.
definitely see the need to have people there. I
Yeah.
was just, I'm just making sure it's not a.
Yeah, I guess it's not like a democratic, if 5 staff members say yes and 2 board members say no, we're not going
That
to
will
bring
be
the
communicated to
recommendation.
the board anyway, I assume,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the purpose behind the committees is to help make our board meetings more efficient by having the questions and concerns that may come from board members addressed before the recommendation comes to the full board for approval.
Okay.
And I think also serves the purpose of better informing board members, particularly as we rotate around committees, an area that you might be less familiar with than something else, so. So we also, this one, we are required to have a motion to adopt the committee
Committee
assignments.
So I'll move to adopt the committee assignments with the addition, I think, of the ex officio. Are we saying?
Okay.
For the coming
foundation.
year.
Okay, great.
Do it again if that's helpful.
It is helpful.
Since otherwise it'd be you, since you're the other representative on
With
the
Susan
relationship.
Kiefer then as ex officio to the Jackson County Library Foundation. Get that down?
Okay, great. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. And we will be discussing a calendar at the retreat on Friday. So just to kind of get things underway for the year, since some of us are serving on brand-new committees to the ones that we have been serving on.
Did you already get them the agenda for Friday?
Okay.
Before we
Thank you.
adjourn, I wanted to see if we can discuss at the retreat, to add it to the retreat agenda, to possibly add a study session to discuss the Ashland Pride banner and possibly workshop any motion or action, should we come to that conclusion, so that when we do get to the scheduled August board meeting, we may be ready to take action upon it. I've observed that in the last study session I attended, there was a general desire and a drive to have meaningful discussions as a board while taking care of business as well. And so I think if we can discuss possible availability before the board meeting for that study session, that would be a public meeting, because we heard amazing, meaningful, profound feedback today. And if we've been checking our board emails, we've also seen the full affinity group statement and other emails coming in. So I don't know if that issue can wait until initial discussion until the next board meeting. Can we please compare calendars at the retreat?
Did you put this on the agenda for the next meeting, this issue, Vicki? Yeah. How does that work? I'm not sure.
Well,
Does it any, I mean, like, does this fall into the category of leaving decisions like this to the director?
This is a board decision, not a.
Well, it falls under, there is a request for reconsideration of a decision that the library director has made.
Oh, that's the reason.
And that's,
Okay.
the board is the point of reconsideration, so. And it's, I mean, it seems like in a month is a reasonable length of time to expect a conversation and a response, so. Normally, I mean, this has obviously kind of come up rather quickly, so normally we would have a little bit more time to be prepared, but. Right, yeah, for other meeting scheduling, so.
Have even more of that calendar filled out.
So between availability after Friday, but before the 20, whatever, the board meeting is. Okay. So board retreat, Gold Hill Library, 9 to 4. And do we have materials? Oh, okay. All righty. Haven't had a chance to look at anything.
Much
Okay.
slimmer.
Okay. And if you haven't been to the Gold Hill Library, it's right on Main Street, hard to miss. And the Library District 10th Anniversary Party will be in the Medford Library on the second floor, Saturday, 5:30 to 7:30, Saturday the 20th. Right. And is the library closed? So access.
I'm sure the planners have figured out how to get people in. Yeah, so there will be, someone at the doors to make sure people can get in. So you don't have to come through the secret back entrance. Ooh, we should do a speakeasy thing, though. The secret passcode is.
Prepared for this
eventuality.
Okay. And the United for Libraries virtual conference.
Have you all gotten information about that? It's a 3-day conference, and as board members in the state of Oregon, your participation is free. If you haven't gotten information, raise your hand, I'll make sure you get it.
I've sent out links twice, Marta. I will send information to you because I think you may have been in that gap. But if you need information again, I can easily send it.
But it's a 3-day conference, and this year they're dividing it out so that each day has a separate focus depending on what your role in a library is. So if you can only go to one day, it's still free. And they do record most of the sessions, and they're available for 90 days afterwards or sometimes even longer. But really good conference, and I've always come away with some inspiration from that conference, so highly recommend.
A lot of good support for boards of all sorts of library organizations.
Yeah. Can you send me that information? I don't think I got that.
Probably.
If you're one more time.